Good evening, friends. So I've been asked to explain an economic concept which I had not heard about. It's very logical and easy to make out, but I hadn't heard of that particular term. So if you can't guess it, it's totally okay, right? So I'll try and explain it. If you see me looking at Jayant, that's a cue that I've forgotten what I have to say. So just note if I'm looking at him. So to explain this economic concept in Seinfeld, we're going to run two scenes. So in the first scene, just for your information, Kramer is out on the beach with his friends, and he's just loitering around, and he finds a rope dangling in the sea. And he just pulls out that rope, and he finds a cage full of lobsters. So he's very happy. He pulls out and cooks dinner for his friends. And the host asks him, and they are in a place called Hampton. So the host there asks him, where did you get these lobsters from? So he said, this is how I found it. And he said, you're not supposed to do it here. It's illegal. Those cages actually belong to commercial lobstermen. So Kramer just dismisses it, saying, there's enough lobster for everybody in the sea. Right? So that's scene number one. Scene number two is where George and Elaine are going to Jerry's house. They are driving, and you would notice in the video that George, the kind of person that he is, he does not want to pay for parking, right? So he's trying to look for a spot where he can park and he doesn't have to pay for it. And luckily enough, he finds that spot. And what happens then is that there's another guy who's trying to come in head first. So he's backing his car, the other guy is coming in. And who does the spot belong to, right? So let's look at these videos and then we continue with the concept.
Look at that lobster.
Whoa! The Cayman!
You got lobster for everybody?
Yeah, and they're fresh, right out of the ocean.
So, Kramer, where'd you get these lobsters? At McLeish's Fish Market?
No, I got them in the ocean.
The ocean?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
Well, I found this rope, and I kept tugging on it. All these lobsters came up.
Those are commercial lobster traps. You can't take lobsters from there. That's against the law.
Hey, take it easy. There are plenty of lobsters in the ocean for everyone.
My father was a lobsterman. He got up every morning at 4 and came home at night stinking of brine. He sent me through law school with the lobsters he caught.
All right, start looking for spaces.
Oh, you're never gonna find a space on Jerry's block. Just put it in a garage.
Look, I have my system. First, I look for the dream spot right in front of the door, and I slowly expand out in concentric circles.
No, come on, George, please put it in a garage. I don't want to spend an hour looking for a space.
Can't park in a garage.
Why?
I don't know, I just can't. Nobody in my family can pay for parking. It's a sickness. My father never paid for parking, my mother, my brother, nobody. We can't do it.
I'll pay for it.
You don't understand. Are you crazy? What are you doing? Hey! Hey! You're stealing my space!
George, wait, you don't know who this guy is? People kill for a parking space in this city.
No. He's not getting away
No,
with this.
George!
Hey, what are you doing? I think I'm parking my car. You can't do that. You can't just sneak in from the back like that.
I'm not sneaking. I didn't even know you were parking. You were just sitting there 3 spaces up.
Well, if you didn't think I was parking, why did you put it in head first?
Well, that's the way I park. Anyway, you didn't start backing in until I pulled in.
I was in the middle of a conversation.
Hey, buddy, what can I tell you?
All right, the point is, I was here first.
I was closer to this space than you were.
But I'm backing in. You can't put it in head first.
I can if I have room.
Are you gonna move the car?
No, I'm not going to move the car. Jerk. Oh, you're not?
Believe this guy? Come on.
Al, you're not getting that space. I mean, I'll sleep in my car if I have to. I'll die out here.
He was
down there. Once he passed his front bumper, it's no longer his space.
No, it doesn't matter. He was...
Already.
No, this is a matter of principle. That would just be saying that anybody can just pull into any parking space any way they want. Well, I'm making a stand here. I'm saying no to head-first parking. I'm not putting up with that. We put up with too much crap in this city. We're not putting up with that.
All right, you move your car. It's your space. You can't go in head first.
Wait a second. Why can't he go in head first? He said the guy was just sitting over there.
What are you talking about? This guy was there first.
But he didn't take it.
Hey, it's his space.
No, it's his space.
Whose space was it? Okay. So if it is nobody's space, right, and if it is free, then what are we talking about here? And why is there so much conflict around it? What is the economic concept that we are trying to bring out here? Okay, what else? So look at the first case. So he picks up lobsters from the ocean, saying that there's enough for everyone. In the second, there's a parking spot which is free, which means anybody can access it, and the two guys are fighting over it. Yeah. Somewhat, yeah. That's close. Okay, so I'll give out the name of the economic concept. It's called common resource. Heard of it? Heard of it? Heard of it? Heard of it, huh? Okay, good. I hadn't heard of it. So I know public goods, I didn't know common resource. So what really is a common resource? So common resource is something which gives user a tangible benefit. At the same time, it is free of any charges, right? So typically, when we look at goods in the economy, right, they are allocated on the, in the market, and it's based on buyers and sellers coming together. So the buyer will pay and get the good, and the seller will get paid for the good he provides, right? So in such category of goods, it is the pricing, or prices are the signals which determine the behavior or the decisions which buyers and sellers take. So this is easy, but the moment we talk of something which is free of charge, these market forces typically do not apply there. And it is in this background that we need to understand common resources. So now can you think of some examples of common resources? Or just before that, there are two characteristics which determine what kind of good it is, whether a private or a public or a common resource, right? So let me describe those to you, and then we'll take examples. So there are two checks here. One is the good excludable, which means can a person be prevented from using that particular good? And the second characteristic is the good or resource rival, which means if one person uses that particular resource, it diminishes the ability of another person to use it. So rival and excludable. Private goods are both excludable and rival. Public goods, on the other hand, are not excludable and not rival, which means you cannot prevent people from using it. At the same time, if one person were to use it, it does not diminish the ability of another person to use it. So can we have some example of public goods?
Park.
Park, yes. Sorry? Okay. So it's a free parking space. And this parking fiasco which happened in the video, right? How many of us have actually done something like that? I have, for one. I mean, not as bad as that. I will not die sitting in my car. I will just move out. But all of us have gotten through this argument, right? So public goods are excludable and rival. So if I'm driving on a state highway, it's a non-congested road, it's a public good, right? So my driving does not make anybody else not being able to bring his car there. What is it about common resources that is different? Because often you would confuse public goods with common resources. Common resources are non-excludable, which means a person cannot be prevented from using that resource, but they are rival. So if I were to use it, it diminishes your ability to use it, just like a parking spot. So now what are the examples of common resources? And there are far too many of them. Sorry? Mining, absolutely. It may be though private, you never know. What else? Seat in a metro. Okay, so one cannot be prevented from using it unless it's a seat for disabled or a lady. And the second check is that if you use it, I cannot use it. Good. Water, perfect. And the most misused resource as well, right? Even congested roads, look at Bangalore city's traffic, right? So if all of us choose to take out our cars and it's only one person sitting in the car, obviously there are a whole lot of others who cannot do it, right? So that's about common resources. There's a very interesting theory about common resources, which is called tragedy of the commons. Yeah. So what does tragedy of the commons talk about? So this was a term which was coined by a gentleman called Garrett Hardin, yeah, 1968, I remember. So this was a term coined by him, and what tragedy of the common basically indicates is depletion of resources when a set of individuals choose to act independently and rationally and yet in their own self-interest. So let's look at an example of fish in international waters, right? So if I'm a fisherman, I decide that I have access to the sea. I'm going to go out and fish, and I'm going to catch a certain amount of fish and sell it. That's a very rational decision I'm making, right? Nobody can stop me from having access to fish or catching it. Now, imagine all the people in this room are fishermen, and just like I'm thinking rationally, they are also thinking rationally about their bread and butter, and they decide that, okay, we are also going to go out in the sea, and we are going to catch fish and make money out of it. So what would happen is, when everybody starts thinking about their own self-interest, what would happen in such a case is that the stock of fish will get depleted, right? With the outcome that none of us will be able to fish and make money, right? So tragedy of the commons basically is that you are thinking of short-term gains, but you are ignoring the long-term consequences. The important thing is, not all common resources undergo the tragedy of commons. So if there's an enlightened self-interest where we all agree that if we were to do such a thing, our short-term decision will have long-term consequence, which is not good for us, we could have some arrangement within us, ourselves, where we decide that, okay, we will catch only a certain amount of fish, which indicates back to that cage of lobsters, right? It was a commercial activity, but it's not like anybody can catch any amount of lobsters, so it's controlled. Now, where there isn't an enlightened self-interest, the policy makers or the government may have to step in, right? So you had, if you would remember earlier in Bangalore, parking spaces around MG Road, Commercial Street, Brigade Road were all non-paid parkings, right? You could just go and park your cars. But because it got misused and there were too many people parking there, they had to start charging for those parking, right? So that is a common resource. One example that I can think of from my childhood, so this was a homework given by Jen, that all of you have to relate this to one example which is true for yourself. So I was thinking, where is it that, you know, I have come across this concept? So I remember as a child, I spent my childhood in Pune, in a place called Aun, right? So this was way back in the 80s. So there was only a group of apartments there, set of apartments, and a lot of vacant land, which you will not find any sign of now, by the way. So we were a bunch of kids who used to go and play cricket, right? So those were times when we didn't have gadgets and TV and cartoon and all that. Most kids used to go and play outside. Anyways, so just like our group, there were several other groups from other apartments, and there was one common area which was like a ground, right? So every evening, you would have arguments between one or the other group about who will use that ground. So the one who comes first, right, they lavishly take the entire field and place their fielders. And when the other group walks in, they say, okay, there is space, please go ahead and take it. But at the same time, it is not enough for the other group. So this was a common resource. It was not excludable. Anybody could have used it. But the person who came in first had the advantage over others. So that is one example I can think of. Quickly, any examples of common resource in the audience. Yeah.
Lalbagh till last 2 years was free. Now you have to pay a fee.
So parks no longer are public goods and they are also becoming common resources.
Morning walk is free. Morning walk is free.
That was after the problems. People did fight and they have to literally fight and take that advantage. And they give you card.
People working in MG Road come in the early morning and block that free parking. Morning 7 to evening 6, nobody can park there. 1 car would be standing there. Only one person would have come.
You know, whenever I have a meeting in UB City, I will first go around Level Road to see if I get a free parking. Because I don't want to pay $100 at UB City. I always do that. If I don't find a parking, then I will go and park in UB City.
Yeah, we park in Coffee Lane parking.
So you have to still look for a free parking spot.
No, within Coffee Lane.
That's called violation of laws.
Okay, so that was the concept of common resource. Any questions? Understood? What is a common resource? Great. Thank you so much. So, I'll hand over to Dinsha. She'll take us through the next one.